Hello, this is my individual presentation for OIC, and we are going to go and show the audience. Yep, you can see Renee there. There's Renee. We have Dee right here. We have Carl. Down a little bit. Carlton. Daniel. Sulo. There we go. And we have Jake. And he's waving again. Nonverbal communication in baseball. Like myself, there are many sports fans. And besides the athletic ability of the players in the game, communication is just important. This goes all the way from the players, from the base runners to the pitcher, the catcher, the umpires, and the opposing team. The basics of all sports are the rules, and I will talk about the umpiring and the origination of the game. The first documented signaling was in the late 1800s, and there is an average of 1,000 nonverbal communications during a 9-inning game. The two people that contributed the most to nonverbal signaling was William Keene. He was the first umpire inducted into the Hall of Fame for his use of hand signals during a Yankees game when it was too hard to hear, and he would use hand signals as just a gesture for the call. And William Dummy Hoy, who was the first deaf player in Major League Baseball, and for the fact that he was deaf from the age of 2, they had to figure out a way to communicate with him, and that helped form a lot of the signals that are used today. However, signaling can be interpreted by anybody just like anything communicated, and this can be used to somebody else's advantage, like the opposing team. Sign stealing is actually not illegal, but it is frowned upon under certain circumstances. However, you cannot have any electrical devices in the dugout, and you cannot use that or have anybody from outside of the dugout relay a message in that is recorded or observed from something technological. Pitchers, a lot of times, if they feel people are stealing signals, they'll throw up and in at the batter, and a lot of times they're suspended for this or fined. A pickpocket was a term that was used for the original sign stealers, and is not really used a whole lot anymore, but that's what they were kind of called. Montreal had a player named Daniel Carver who would actually read the veins in the second baseman or the shortstop's neck, and if they were going to see who was going to cover the base when there was a runner on first, and if the neck would tighten up, it would be with his hand behind his glove would be him saying me, and that would tighten up the neck. But if you'd say you, his neck wouldn't tighten up, and he could actually read that to find out who was going to cover the base, and he would make sure he hit towards the hole. In the 1960s, for the Chicago White Sox, there were people that would hang their arms out of the scoreboard to signal if a curveball was coming up to the home team's batter, and they would use that to know what pitch was coming out of, which it does not happen a whole lot anymore due to technology and being able to see that happening. Now, you would have to find a way to prevent this from happening, so teams had to start masking the signs, for instance, with the base coaches. Base coaches, their basic signals are when they bunt, they would hold their belt. If it was a hit and run, they would touch their chest, or to steal, they would touch their leg, and they would mask this with different strategies that they would use. The first letter system is one of these, in which if a coach would touch his head, that means to hold if there's a base runner on first, for example. Another one that was used is the Dodgers third base coach for a suicide squeeze he would refer to a player by their last name, and one of the players one time didn't get this. He thought he was just referring to him by his last name, and it kind of screwed up the game a little bit. So that's another very important factor to be able to know what signals are going on. However, the most important nonverbal communication comes from just 2 of the players on the baseball field, and that would be the pitcher and the catcher. I'll explain some of the techniques that they'll use. For their basic signaling, 1 finger down would be a fastball, 2 down is a curve, 3 down would be a changeup, and if the catcher would tap into his glove, that would mean that he was going to have you go on the second call instead of the first, just to do a basic masking of the signal. Another strategy that they would use would be an automatic switch, in which a signal called, they would use the next one or the opposite pitch in the order. For instance, a fastball would become a curveball would become a changeup. A decoy would also be used where a catcher will throw down a whole set of signals and none of them mean anything until the catcher would call a signal that would be called a hot signal, representing that the next signal given was the actual call. So they could flash 2 or throw down a 2, 1, 2, 5th, 1, 5th again, and then the next signal, say the 5th was the hot sign for it, he would be going on that. On the next one. So another one would be just the use of a flip with that, where they just use one signal to go into the next instead of using a whole series of signals. And that's a basic use of pitch calling and how they'll mask it and how it's used in areas of nonverbal communication. And between this and the other 3 topics I brought up are how they make the game of baseball work. I hope this will give you a little more insight into how important signaling is, all the way from the umps to the players, the pitcher and the catcher especially, and amongst the other teams, to make sure they can or cannot, from the direction you're looking at it, be able to pick up what is going on in the game and use it to their advantage. I know for one, without signaling, it would make my summers a lot more boring, especially at work, and having to not be able to watch the game because there would be none, or my trip down to Miller Park. Thank you. Now for the audience. I don't think so. You can ask it if you want to. There's Renee again. And D. Yeah. Carl. Look at Carl. There's Carlton. There's Dan. Oh, there's Jake. Are you really?
Are you a couple?
There we go.